I'd like to welcome to the show this week. I have Klayton. He is Celldweller. He is Circle of Dust. He is. Uh, what other pseudonyms do you have? You've got quite a few, haven't you? That's it,
Scandroid, Freak
Scandroid.
Gen.
Yep.
Yeah, and Freak Gen is my kind of electronic analog modular synth 90s kind of mishmash.
Okay.
So four active projects right
Four
now.
active projects right now, but it's been like I was saying just before I started hitting record. It's been 7 years since I last had you on, and obviously a lot's happened in that time. Because we had you on before, just to have a general chat and talk about your music and your label, and we had James on as well,
Yep.
on a separate podcast. But the one with you, I think it was like episode 18, and it's still being listened to and downloaded today. It's one of my most popular podcasts I've done, which is, all down to you. It's nothing to do with me. But
I don't know how much I had to do, but that's great. That's good to hear. I didn't know that 7 years later, people are still dialing in. That's cool.
I mean,
that's
with the Spotify 2022 rap thing,
right.
yours actually came up in the top three. It was number 2, to be fair, but
Wow.
that was recorded 7 years ago. The other one was just a couple from this year.
Wow.
But yeah, no, it's just a sort of testament to that. It's crazy, but 7 years is a long time. So
it is. Yeah.
But no, obviously, like saying before we started here, but just to sort of catch up on it. Basically, last time we chatted, you were releasing like through FiXT, you were releasing songs, remixes, stuff like that every week. You were actively looking for artists. I think you had like a handful of them at the time.
Yep.
But you've grown considerably since then. The label FiXT itself has it's grown, and it's sort of split into the subgenres the genres that you work in. So
yeah, sort of.
Is it?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, is it still split? Because you have got the FiXT Radium, FiXT Neon, and the other one escapes me.
Noir.
Noir.
We had FiXT Noir.
Yeah.
We had. So I'm saying that in past tense because, yes, you're right. We did actually, for starters, backing up a little bit, the label has grown considerably. We have over 30 artists on the roster active. Several of those are mine, as we've established, but the label has grown. Really, the label for a long time was pretty much just me. It supported me. We had a couple of artists that kind of came and went. But really in the last few years, we have really the label has taken huge strides. We have the best roster we've ever had. We have the best staff we've ever had. The company is over 20 employees worldwide. So we're really growing. There's a lot of great things happening. And it's somewhere along that line when we were signing these artists, we started putting sounds in buckets. So we're like, okay, FiXT Neon is kind of the synthwave thing, and Noir was going to be this EDM, and Radium was this electronic rock. And really pretty quickly, after spending a bunch of time and money branding all of these things, we kind of looked at it all and we're like, we're confusing people. Like, we are one label and anything we sign is just part of this label. So really we kind of scrapped that whole idea, and we are just FiXT, and anything on the roster. I think for me, Celldweller, it's like I've always said, I'm genre agnostic. Like I don't ascribe to any particular genre. I try to have boundaries with when I create so that I don't end up creating for Celldweller what would really be Scandroid. So I started carving those things out. But for the most part, I could do anything I want to. Yeah. So we're like, why would we then put artists in buckets when artists should just be able to do whatever? If we think they're talented, they're a FiXT artist. It's not a division of any specific sub-label of the label. Yeah. So we're FiXT, 30 plus artists signed to the roster, and growing. And we have like a lot of great things happening.
Excellent. No, that's good. I mean, you got around to with Seething Akira. We're going to use one of your artists as a thing here.
Yes.
Big fan of those guys. I've had them on my show.
Me too.
Multiple times over the years. I know Charlie, I know Kit, I know Richard, I know all of them all. And it was great to sort of see, because I know that initially they were going to be part of the label. Then I think you guys had a hurdle to jump that didn't permit having them signed. Or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Not to go into specific detail, but yeah, you went back and you caught them again.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, the story of Seething specifically, which I'm sure I shared with them, but maybe not. So maybe if they listen to this, they'll actually get the full story. But like in the early days of Spotify, nobody that I knew in the world was using Spotify. Everybody was still buying music. And I had discovered this thing and I'm like, this is the future.
Yeah.
And I stopped buying albums and I got Spotify. And one of the things, even early on, algorithmically, they would suggest music. And I don't know what I was listening to, but then I see this Seething Akira thing suggested and I click on, they might've had two songs, 3 songs. And I'm like, this music is a little underproduced, but I love this sound. What is this? And then James went and reached out and we kind of went through the process and we started working on music and an album together. And again, it was like, even as a label, we were trying to find our footing. So we had great intentions. It really had nothing to do with the Seething guys. It had to do more with us on the label side, trying to figure out where we fit and what we were doing. And before we could actually complete an album or an EP, we were like, guys, we don't want to do you a disservice. Maybe we should just kind of like all step away from this. And that's what happened. And years later, I mean, they heavied up, they got heavier. Yeah. Their sound got more serious, although I think they're like the funniest band we might have on the entire roster. I love them. I love British sense of humor. I mean, I grew up on like Monty Python and even Benny Hill. I know that's maybe not the coolest thing. Now I just mostly binge Peppa Pig, but, you know, coming back to it, you know, I mean, everybody was kind of like, I don't know, is this going to work this time? And we're like, no, we're ready. We're more sure of what we're going to do. And really bringing those guys back into the fold, it has been great.
Excellent. No, I mean, I love those guys. They deserve everything that they're getting at the moment as well, with the announcements that they've already had from the new album. And next year's festival appearances and things like that.
Yeah.
It's just, I love watching bands grow. I love watching them. Like I've done it for years when I was in bands myself, and I've always sort of thought to myself, I've always thought I have an eye for bands that I know can do well. That makes sense. Even at an early stage, there's been a few bands that I've sort of tipped to do well, and they have. If there was a way of making money from that, that would be awesome. But
you need to do some A&R for FiXT, I think.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'll give that a go. We'll see what was out there. But yeah, no, just I love watching them do what they're doing at the moment with the like Bloodstock and everything like that they've got next year. And I hope they can take it further than that as well, and creep up like those headline slots and stuff like that. And,
I mean, they're growing.
They've got the armor. They've got the weaponry, I should say. Yes. It's just you know, making sure that the right notes hit here and there, and you know, as bands have to like crawl out of the circuits and into the mainstream, if you will. But they've got everything there. They've got, like you say, they've got a great sense of humor about everything as well, and they're just the nicest guys. So,
yeah, they are.
But I mean, you've got, like you say, you've got over 30 artists signed to FiXT now. And I think back when I spoke to you, it was about 7 or 8, give or take, like your extracurricular, if you will. So I think last time you spoke, you just got the rights back to Circle of Dust. That would have been 2015, I think, or 16, somewhere there. So around about there. So that was I've been enjoying the re-releases and remasters of that and everything. Which is cool. Thank you. And obviously the synthwave stuff you've been doing with Scandroid has been awesome as well. Like, I've introduced so many people to you, like your music, just through everyone sort of getting into that synthwave side of things with the the sort of retro revival, if you will, of say retro revival, but like what's it called? I've forgotten the name. It is the Netflix show. Stranger Things. Oh, Stranger Things. Yeah, right. Stuff like that. People getting that nostalgia hit, but also people hearing that sound for the first time. It's you know, I'm of that age that I was aware of the music at that point. I was born in 1980, so I grew up through the 80s in the UK. So a lot of that synthwave, a lot of that like Gary Newman and the sort of early Thompson Twins and the New Romantic Movement and all that kind of stuff back in The Cure. I should mention them because they just recently one of my favorite bands in the world. My sister was at their show the other night. She sent me a picture. She was like, not to brag, but, and she got this really good picture of Robert Smith. I was like, he's still going as many times as he quits, and this is our last tour, and then they come back and they do it. It's like, all right, awesome. Yeah, that's what Kiss are doing at the moment as well. Keep
Yeah,
going.
right.
Just keep
Yep.
going.
Keep going.
But yeah, no, I mean, just sort of like I grew up in that sort of era with my brothers and sisters into that kind of music as well. But like I love hearing it, and just sort of like, because I'm old enough to kind of reintroduce people to stuff. I've been putting towards like obviously a lot of stuff that was on Neon, so likes of like LeBrock and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously all fixed and everything.
Yep.
But yeah, no, just like that, the Scandroid, you know, the Tokyo album.
Oh, Neo Tokyo.
Neo Tokyo.
That song. That's
That's the
on
song,
there.
yeah. And just stuff like that. Just the releases you had at that point, as well as like your other artists on there. I've just been like where I work. I had control of the stereo, so
It's dangerous.
it is dangerous. It is, but you know, it's good at the same time because I get to get people to listen to you guys and you know get those streams up on.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Whatever service we're using at the top. Well, there's only one service we're using at that point, but it's you know, it's because of the company I work for. So it's yeah, so it's Apple, just to sort of give you context of that. So but yeah, we have like obviously free Apple Music subscriptions just through work, but the streams pay the same because we just have it on in our repair rooms and whatnot. So
great,
you know. But yeah, no, I mean sort of one thing I wanted to ask you about with the label and stuff, because you at the time back then, I think it was the first sort of time that I'd heard of like, I think you had the strategy of like releasing singles like almost weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. At the time I think it was around then, and that seems to be a thing that a lot of people are looking to adopt now. I've seen a lot of press of various bands, like even established big like rock and metal bands, are saying, well, I think we're just going to release singles, like do like the sort of periodic release. So you know, a song every month.
I don't know. I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm being arrogant, because I'm not, but I tend to do things not mindful of what anybody else is doing. I just do what makes sense to me. And early on, before anybody was really doing that, I just realized releasing a song or two at a time. You know, this is during the iTunes era. There wasn't even streaming. It was like you had to buy things. It just made sense on a lot of levels. And when you really think about it, historically in music, pre-1960, maybe pre-1970, the world lived with singles. They were 45 records. It was like an A side and a B side. That was it. You didn't get really full albums until, you know, we started hitting the 70s and then all the way through. So for it to actually head back towards singles, not only has that happened, I think that probably 85% of the world in streaming has adopted that philosophy. They are, everybody, including us, we are releasing singles because the world now operates on playlists instead of albums. So you can create a playlist with your feels, you know, like what, oh, my sad playlist, my happy playlist, my heavy playlist, whatever. It's not so much about an album, but on the other side of that coin, us as a label, there is still very much a lot of value in an album. So although we release singles, it's usually with the objective of these singles are accruing and will eventually become an album, a collection of works.
Yeah.
So that as artists, we have a target. Okay, we're doing this album, you know, but we're releasing it one song at a time.
Yeah.
And then the fans have a full body of work to adopt and absorb. The press seems to like that better versus covering a single. But really the consumption, people consuming music, you stay on their radar more often by releasing a song every 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks. It depends on what kind of artist you are. And that keeps your name fresh. That keeps you in people's minds. And it keeps you in the algorithm of places like Spotify, Apple Music, and the like.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm just sort of like, it was the first time I really heard of that concept was when I spoke to you back then, and I've just noticed a lot of like I'm not saying you pioneered it, but it was just sort of that formula that works. And you're right, a lot of a lot of things are centered around playlists now. Like if you were to release an album, no one's going to stick the whole album on their playlist.
Right.
Well, they might, but like my daughter will probably stick a whole Taylor Swift album on their playlist. But you know, it's singles. Like when you see like the sort of like the picked for playlists and stuff on the various sort of platforms where it's like a new metal list or a new electronic metal list or whatever. And it's right, you want to stay on there, but you can't stay on there with the same song.
Right.
So yeah, every sort of like couple weeks, every month or whatever, releasing that song keeps you, like you say,
relevant, in people's minds. And you can attest to it because you have been doing this for so many years, really focused on music that was hybridized, you know, metal bands mixing electronics and likewise. So you were on that cutting edge before it kind of became trendy. But you know, I can't speak for your daughters per se, but they may have Taylor Swift in a playlist, and interspersed in between these tracks might be Slipknot. You know, going from like Swift to Slipknot, it's like that is the way the world is working right now, which then I think further solidifies the kind of music that we make, you know, where it is hybridized. It's a mix of a lot of different styles. There are no rules, and more and more and more, even in hip hop and trap and things like this, you hear these hybridizations of sound. It's not weird anymore to mix these styles. In fact, it's becoming much more mainstream.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I've seen some of my daughter's playlists, and yeah, they do vary from, like I mentioned earlier, Taylor Swift. They're very much into their K-pop groups as well. So it kind of veers into that. But then some of those, you know, just like I know she has, you know, rock bands on there. Shining Down. What was the other one? Nothing More and stuff like that. And yeah, and it's just interesting to see them, how they consume, because back when I was younger, it was very much what your friends are into, which is obviously, you know, same with her, but it's centralized around the albums.
Yeah, right. Here, borrow this CD or borrow this cassette.
Yeah.
Now it's literally just like text your friend a link to a track or an entire playlist that you made. It's the new mixtape, you know?
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And it's sort of seeing how that works for your label, and obviously for yourself as well. But you know, just watching that sort of progress, and then seeing that as I'd say that it was ahead of its time when you were originally talking about it with me, and prior to that, just that sort of way of thinking that I don't think if any other labels really have clocked on until now. I'm just trying to think of another.
It's the new normal. Yeah. And again, I won't sit here and say I pioneered the idea, but not at all. But again, I'm just more averse to risk. Yeah. So because I've had to survive in this industry with little to no help, I had to take risks. I just kind of followed my nose, so to speak. If I felt like I should do something, I did it. And really, it's not like a label could blame me for wasting $100,000 of their dollars by making a decision. It was my own money. So if I wanted to take a risk, or I felt strongly that something should be done a certain way, I would just do it. And trust me, 90% of those decisions end in failure. But the 10% that don't is what drives everything that I have right now in my career and with the label.
Yeah. I mean, to be in that position to take those risks, or to have that like thing to take that risk, it's you know, I just sit here in awe of it. It's like kind of like, wow, you actually, you know, when something works out, you know, when you work something out, like through, like a lot of people weren't thinking in algorithms before, they were thinking in demographics, which is almost the same, but it's not. It's a different mathematical equation, if you will, that they're using. Because like when I was in the industry, it was like, you know, how do you want to market yourself? How do you want to, you know, what is your demographic? What is your core audience? And it's like, well, it could be teenagers, it could be people in their early 20s, late 20s, and then I don't think people in their 30s are into us, but you know, it's eliminating people out, which you don't want. Whereas the algorithm, obviously, it's only as good as the users at that point, because that's where they get their data from. So they'll pick music for you based on what you've listened to before. So if I went back, I listened to, you know, The Prodigy and Orbital and Underworld and stuff like that.
Yeah,
the sort of like UK, they're all good. Yeah. And like the drum and bass scene here was like all the sort of metalheads like Goldie and Ed Rush and Dillinger and all that. It's
huge Metalheads fan. I have the documentary. I don't know if you've ever seen it, the Metalheads documentary. I ripped it from a VHS that I still own, and I still probably almost every 1 or 2 years I watch that doc just because it's so inspirational to me.
Yeah, I've got the VHS somewhere in here as well.
Well, you know, and I think as an artist, you know, to that point, you can get caught up in the algorithm. You can get caught up in who is my audience and who am I trying to appeal to. But I really think you make the art, you worry about what inspires you, and your audience will find you versus the other way around. I think pop music is what chases the audience. I think art and true artists make their art and the audience chases them. And that to me is the only way it should be. You know, from my perspective, for what I want and in fulfillment in my life, I have no desire to chase a trend or to do something because I think everybody else wants to hear this thing. In fact, most of the music I make, I'm like, wow, I'm about to head into complete irrelevance here. I'm going to put this track out and everyone's going to be like, he's lost it. He's just out of touch. and I'm fortunate every time I release a song and people are like, I love this. I'm like, okay, whoa, I escaped the guillotine, one more time.
No, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, you've just released a new album, which is the first Celldweller album in about 5 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Because Off-World was the last one, wasn't it?
Yes, I think that was 16 or 17. I don't remember the year, but that was around the time right before I got married, sold my place in Detroit, and broke down my studio, built a house and a studio, or I was supposed to, in LA, which pretty much almost tanked my life and my career. Had 3 babies, like pretty much all at one time, just popped them out. So my life was crazy. So after Off-World, everything just kind of just went down the toilet as far as my career. And I'm still reeling from that right now. But sorry, I cut off your question.
No, it's fine. No, it was kind of answering what I was going to ask anyway, but it was, I mean, just sort of following what you just said then, obviously the sort of the breakdown that you had of the move to LA. I mean, you did like the most stressful things you can do. Apparently, I have kids, move, and get married.
Yeah, all at once.
All at once.
I thought it was going to be a year of pain, and I'm like, I can endure a year. I've done this before, like enduring many years of pain, but this ended up being a whole different level of pain. Probably the worst contractors I could have hired for everything that I did out there. So a studio build that was supposed to take 3 months. Once we eclipsed the 2.5-year mark, and this guy was still not done, and everything that we discussed was just nothing came to fruition. My wife and I just basically were like, why are we here? We're in Los Angeles. The crime rates, the taxes, the COVID mandates. We moved there right before COVID. Literally, we moved there in, I think, 2019. And in 2020, COVID hit. And we lived in probably the worst state in America that you could live as far as the vaccine mandates. It was insanity. We sometimes were looking around going, how are we going to survive this? And I was making music in a bedroom. Like I said to you earlier, I still currently am, even though I moved out of LA. Best decision I could have made, worst decision I ever made was moving there. Best one was actually moving out of there. And I'm close to having a new studio built. So I'm hoping for the first time in 4 years, I'm going to get back to like video, posting video content, a lot more music. But for whatever it's worth, so far, I've survived it. It has been really brutal, but I've survived it. And through it, by against all odds, FiXT has grown considerably. And I credit a lot of that to James Rhodes, who's really at the helm of making sure all the wheels are turning. And then, my career has still, for whatever reason, I don't know what's driving it. Like you said, like I don't know why I would be the #2 podcast for your 2022 Wrapped when that that podcast is 7 years old. I don't know why people are still listening, but I appreciate everyone who does, and hopefully this one will get some listens too.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You've got something new for them to listen to, because like I said, that was back, let's say, 7 years ago, and we're here now with a new Celldweller album. And I mean, sort of going on from like a lot of that, because like this album's very, I'd say a lot more aggressive than previous. Like you've had sort of like heavy tunes before, but this one, like when I first heard it, I was like, you're pissed off about something.
Oh, I am pissed. I'm pissed off about so many things.
And I didn't realize you'd gone through, like, because I remember, like, obviously I follow you on the social media channels, and I remember you seeing, like, in progress photos of said potential studio and the move and your new children and and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, it was great. You're getting getting not saying you hadn't had your shit together before, but you know, everything was, you know, doing well. FiXT was growing. I don't know what the reasons were to move to LA, whether it was sort of like profession based or if it was just literally we have the opportunity to do so, or
I thought for the career, I'd always had my mind. I grew up, I'm a New Yorker. I was born there. I lived my entire life there. Moved to the Midwest, which I don't particularly love, but it helped me, you know, I could afford to live there. It helped me grow the business. And then I was like, LA is the next stop, you know, for career, and, you know, lifestyle. I wanted to live in good weather and all that. I just obviously glamorized it and thought it was going to be a much nicer experience than it ended up being. It really almost was a career killer. And I'm glad that I survived it, but, man, just getting through that and out the other side of this. I started Satellites, the album Satellites, very hopeful, because I started writing this at the beginning of the move to LA. So I literally wrote probably 12 or 14 demos in an 8-foot by 8-foot room in that LA house, because the rest of the house was completely empty and our entire property was dirt. So there was no studio to speak of. There was no furniture. There was nothing. So I had an 8-by-8 room with a laptop, and I was super inspired. I was writing tons of music, most of which ended up being the album. And as time progressed, and the luster of moving to Los Angeles and this dream of what it could be started to fade, and I started realizing the horrors of what this actually became, I got even more pissed off, and I got even more disenfranchised, and I was struggling to find time to work. So yes, I think through that process, the album naturally took a very dark and very heavy turn. I did a lot more screaming than I did singing, and it was one of those things I was describing earlier where I'm like, this is where I'm going to lose my fan base. They're going to be like, what is this? This sucks. We don't want this. And it is what it is. The Cure, we talked about Robert Smith. Probably like many people, to me, Disintegration, probably like oh my God, Pornography. Those are my favorite Cure albums, the darker, older albums. After that, I kind of I feel like I lost it. So you can't, as an artist, I don't expect everyone to love every album I make. But I'm grateful when people do like what I do. So I thought, again, I was going to do this album, which I thought was going to take me, 6 months to a year to finish. And it took the full 4 years because of the chaos of my life. I was spending more of my days managing and fighting with contractors, and then dealing with my children during earthquakes, fires, evacuations, crime, the homeless, the mandates. I mean, it was like, again, I haven't said most of this publicly, so you're actually getting more of the you're getting more of the story than almost anybody else. I haven't really said much publicly, but it pretty much was as close to hell as I've ever lived during that entire process. So I'm hoping to kind of start knocking on heaven's door here soon. As soon as my studio is done, I've got some awesome new gear. And I'm really excited not to live in Los Angeles. So I just think the pressure and the parts of it that I hated, I'm out of it now. So I feel like all of that is off my shoulders, and I can just live here and raise my family and make some sick music. Nice. That's what I want to do.
Nice. It's like, I remember when you released Electric Eye, which is one of the tracks off the album. And
that was the first. That was the first one.
And that was a while ago. It was about 4 years ago or so. And yeah, no, I mean, I heard that. Because I love drum and bass. It's just a pure drum and bass track. With guitars, and it's great. And and it's and then like hearing this album, like you say, it's, well, like I said before, it's a lot more aggressive, and now it makes sense. Because like before, I mean, you had aggression in your music before, but not to that. I don't think it's been to that level, from what I mean, apart from like maybe
a song here or there, but not a whole album. That was like, In fact, the if you want to call it a ballad, the last song I wrote was the quote unquote ballad, the last song on the album, and it was almost like. It came, that probably is the most genuine, lyrically, the most genuine song on the whole album, as far as like, I finally was like, screw this. I'm just writing about what is happening inside here. And And that was the last song I did, because really most of the time there, the frustration it just came out as just angry music. I just wanted to scream more than I wanted to sing.
It's therapeutic, isn't it?
It's very, yes, it was for me. It was me holding on to the strands of sanity that I had, and I'm like, please don't let go. Like, yeah. I have to stay sane.
No, definitely. I mean, like back when I was in bands and stuff, and especially when I was fronting a band, there was nothing more like lethargic than or not lethargic, cathartic, I think is the word.
You're cathartic.
That's it.
Yeah,
lethargic.
That's the word.
That's the wrong word. But yeah, cathartic, like to sort of like, you know, scream it out if you had, you know, if you had that week or that day that was really difficult, or that whole year or many years in your fact.
Yep.
And obviously, you know, combine that with you know, anything like COVID and stuff, like to have that on top of what you were sort of going through on that, and how, you know, obviously that part of the world handled things. You know, I don't think anywhere in the world handled it particularly well, to be honest with you.
No.
Because no one had been through this, so it was kind of like everyone was learning from everyone else's mistakes. So
and then the misinformation, not to get into conspiracies, but my God, we were lied to so hard by people like in this country, Anthony Fauci, who's supposed to be the authority, lied to us for his own personal gain. It's like we've been lied to as people worldwide. We've been lied to about things. You know, the ballad, the last song that I wrote was called "The End of the World," and it's like, you know, all of these things are supposed to be great, but why does it feel like the end of the world? Why do I feel like the world is ending then? Because everywhere I looked, and it wasn't just me, everybody around me, everywhere we looked, we're being lied to by politicians and the health experts. And my God, I mean, I don't even need to say. You know, you have your own share of things there in the UK, you know, like politically speaking and everything else. It's just the world has been in such upheaval, financial things right now, and the quote unquote supply chain. I mean, it's like things we've never seen in our lifetime. You know, and I'm sitting here with 3 babies going, man, I brought them into this world. Like, how am I going to keep them safe from this? Like, it was overwhelming to me as a parent, my career, the company, like they were on every level. I just felt like, man, the walls are caving in. How do I survive? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It was definitely, it was tough here. Obviously, you know, the sort of the political things that have been going on here have been a shambles as ever. Like we've had 5 different prime ministers in the past 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And like at the moment, a lot of industries are sort of, you know, they're striking. So our public transport, our nurses, the NHS, which is our health service.
Wow.
They're all, because they don't feel they're being paid enough, which I don't think they are. Their pay rise from what they're sort of like, because it's obviously a government run or public owned. Their pay rise was not enough, which, you know, and that's why they're having to strike. And like from just sort of that standpoint, and just watching like the cost of living just keep going up and up and up, and you know, everywhere, right? You guys are feeling it there. It's like inflation through the roof. It's so pay is not equal to that, you know. And as a label, and as an artist, we're not getting paid more from Spotify because there's inflation. So everything costs more for us, the collective us, everybody. But we're not really getting paid. You know, and what do you do? I mean, we just talked to an artist who was like, man, I got an advance to make an album, and I had to use that advance to survive because everything was shut down during the lockdown. How are we going to live? So I couldn't even spend the money to make my album. I had to use that money to buy food. And these are the positions a lot of people are in right now. It's madness.
To put
it into a simple word, it is madness. Just sort of going from, you know, not that anyone expects to have everything handed out to them, but it's sort of everyone expects being able to live, like, being paid fairly, or things costing a fair amount, like.
Right.
And
it's
very difficult to sort of like, especially when you've got kids like you and myself and many other people have, you know, have got families to feed, got families to put through school. You know, we've got to, you know, make sure our kids have a certain uniform for their school. You know, you know, if their shoes start to break, we need to get them new shoes, and we've got Christmas coming up, and you know, the usual things that cost a lot of money.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, and it's becoming more and more not that I wasn't watching what I was paying for or how much I was paying. It's sort of it's getting to a point where there's no choice but to get into a level of debt.
Yeah, you got to tighten the proverbial belt and stop spending money and be much more mindful.
Yeah,
like you said, it's not even about being rich and just spending money like crazy, but like just the basic things cost so much now that it's. Yeah, I think that's a worldwide thing, and probably a lot of people that are listening to this. I don't know at what point they're listening to this in time, but currently, anyone who's listening to this is probably feeling the same pain that we are. You know?
Yeah, definitely. But hopefully there is. I mean, it probably take a few years, but hopefully it will ease.
And
things will ease up, because there's a lot of things sort of that I want to do that that requires money to do. There's certain things that my family want to do, and it's just sort of getting through that, and it's that or taking on extra jobs and stuff, which I don't really want to do, because I don't have that time to sort of take away from family, from sort of my passions, my hobbies, if you will, and stuff like that. So hopefully things will get better for everyone. And I mean, it's a nice thing to hope this time of year anyway. Being
it
Christmas
is.
And the time
let's stay hopeful. Let's stay
hopeful, and that World War III doesn't kick in as well. That's the other
right
thing in the back of my mind, but that's a completely different podcast right there. But just to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for interviewing me once again.
No,
we should do this at least every 7 years, definitely, maybe sooner.
We'll keep releasing stuff.
That's the plan. Yeah, that is the plan.
And I'll liaise with Lisa and everyone and James, and we'll see what we can do. But just a couple of end questions, if that's all right. Just sort of to wrap things up. But we've already kind of touched on it, I think, before, with records like The Cure and a lot of the dance music that I mentioned and stuff like that. But could you name the most pivotal album in your life, the one that kind of really changed things for you? And that's a sort of loaded question, that one. Normally I ask for three, but I don't have time for three. So
right. Is it like Cocteau Twins, Heaven or Las Vegas, or is it The Cure, Disintegration, or was it Metallica, Master of Puppets, or Slayer, Sound of Heaven? I don't know. I mean, it kind of runs the gamut. I could tell you a song that was pivotal without me understanding it when I was very young. I heard Mr. Roboto by Styx.
Oh, nice.
And this robot voice in this song mystified me, and I couldn't understand how they even did this. Stuck with me. And as a teenager, when I got into production, I happened to ask a friend of mine, the only guy I knew who understood production. I was like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's a vocoder. And of course, there was no internet. I couldn't Google that. So I took his definition of what a vocoder was, and I just went on the hunt to figure that out. And so when I started producing music, one of my biggest songs is called Switchback. And the hook that just says Switchback is a vocoded. It was a VST, a plugin called Orange Vocoder, which at the time I don't even think I purchased, because back then I had no money. It was one of those, crack deals, whatever. I don't know how I even got it. Somebody I knew gave it to me, and I vocoded that. And man, my affinity towards vocal processing and doing things that are abstract and abnormal or synthesized with vocals, the root of it probably comes from Mr. Roboto by Styx.
Nice. No, that's amazing, because the same sort of thing happened with me, sort of sort of mention it, but I had the same thing happen with me with Herbie Hancock's Rocket.
Yeah, I love that song.
And
the
what turned out to be the scratch noise.
Yeah.
By DXT. Can't remember his name, but that was sort of one of the things. What is that noise? What is that? Out of all these instruments, they've got a synth going, they've got piano, whatever going on, and there's just going on.
Yeah, right. So cool, right?
And then that was the sort of one that got me into you see behind me here. I don't know if you've got the camera on, but
I did.
Yeah, I got the turntables behind me here, and that's what I do. That's what I did in a new metal band for 10 years. I made that noise along with various other noises, but I tend the scratch DJ, and it's just sort of one of those things where it was that moment of that you obviously had with Mr. Roboto, and Yeah, no, that's crazy. That's such. I haven't heard that song in a long time.
Long time. My kids love it, man. They request it probably 3 times a day. So I hear it a lot.
Between that and Peppa Pig.
And then Peppa Pig, right?
That petulant little pig. I remember those days. But yeah, final question. Hobbies away from music. So obviously you got your family. That I wouldn't say it was a hobby. That's, that is your life. But what are your hobbies away from music? What does Klayton get up to away from Celldweller and the like?
Very, very little. Very little. If I'm able to catch a movie, which is not even a hobby, it's just a guilty pleasure that I can take some time to actually watch something. That's a pro. But really, I am in a fortunate position where if I had time for a hobby, it would be literally doing what I already do. Like I want to come in, and if I had time to kill, I would just come in and patch something cool on my modular synthesizers and just make a cool beat. Play with a piece of software I haven't played with before, but with no agenda, not to necessarily make a song. So to me, that would be the guilty pleasure, is like I'm just making a sound or a riff for the sake of doing it. And then a lot of times those turn into riffs on albums or sounds that I put in sample packs or whatever. So really, I don't actually, it's not like I go fishing or collect cars, or I don't do anything like that, man. I'm the most boring person you're ever going to meet. Like I just try to make music, try to be a good dad, good husband, and survive. That's it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Klayton, thank you very much. Like I said, thank you. It's been a pleasure speaking to you again.
Same here. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope to you and all your listeners that you guys have a great holiday season, and looking forward for a good, hopefully 2023.
Awesome. You too as well. I hope things get better for you and your studio gets built.
It will, and they will. I'm confident.
I look forward to the content that comes from that as well.
Me too.
And the rest of your label as well. Shout out to obviously Seething Akira, LeBrock. Toronto is Broken as well. I mean, Christian's a great guy. I had him on the show.
Great stuff. Wait until you hear the new album, man. It's going to blow your mind.
I mean, I love his TikTok feed at the moment where he's doing rock and metal crossover.
Yes,
like D&B crossover. And I'm trying to get hold of one of his bootlegs, but he won't give it to me. So, but
keep trying.
I will keep trying. But yes, no, thank you very much, Klayton. And have a good rest of your day. And
you do the same.
Yeah, we'll speak soon. Yeah.
Sounds good, man.
Awesome.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you, mate. Bye-bye.